In the next 10 minutes, James and I are going to try and talk a little bit about why NatWest is committed to climate and the path to net zero, both in terms of some of the ambitious climate targets we've put out there, but more importantly, why it is so important to us to find ways we can support businesses, large and small, to manage their own transition. We want to demonstrate on the journey we've been on over the last couple of years how we've started to embed climate change and the path to net zero in everything that we do, including how we engage, support our customers, but also how we finance some of the projects that businesses like yourselves or your own customers are looking to do. It is not only the right thing to do, but we also believe it is a sensible business thing to do and a brilliant opportunity for the UK and its amazing businesses to create new sustainable growth opportunities and in some instances, as we've seen, lead on the world stage.
Thanks, Solange, and good morning, everybody. I'm James Close, Head of Climate Change at NatWest Group, and really delighted to be with you here today and just see the energy in the room and outside and so many great businesses joining this conversation around net zero. And 2.5 years ago, we put climate change together with learning and enterprise at the heart of our purpose-led strategy. And we did that because we believe that getting the money to flow towards net zero is going to help us deal with the biggest challenge of our time, which is climate change. And the first thing we did was we started to measure the carbon on our balance sheet and to report it with a view to halving the climate impact of our financing by 2030. And that's given us a very clear focus on what we need to do to mobilize our finance in a positive way. And we've done it also through committing to the Science-Based Targets Initiative, where we've submitted our targets for validation, being one of the principal founding members of the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, committing to producing a climate transition plan consistent with the Chancellor's announcement at COP26 that all organisations are going to have to do a transition plan, and also putting our climate strategy, our goals and our objectives to our shareholders. And I was delighted that at our AGM we got a 92% approval for our plans. So we really committed to supporting this transition, and we also want to make sure that we are doing what we can to put our strategy in place as effectively as possible. And I'm going to talk about two areas, which is getting our own house in order and ending harmful emissions. And Solange will talk about another two areas, which is helping our customers on the transition and building powerful partnerships. But we've worked really hard to get our own house in order. We've reduced the climate impact of our own operations by 48% from a 2019 baseline. And we've also measured the emissions that our staff produce through working from home over the pandemic and this hybrid working activity that we've undertaken. And we've also offset those emissions through buying high-quality carbon credits. We've also focused on ending the most harmful activity, particularly with working with our large, high-emitting customers to assess whether or not they have credible transition plans that are temperature-aligned and going to demonstrate that they can get to net zero. And for some of those businesses that can't demonstrate they can get to net zero, we've had to make tough choices to stop banking them. But we think that's the right thing to do. But we're working with our customers in every opportunity we have to get them to increase their ambition and to accelerate their transition.
Hopefully by now it's evident that we've put some ambitious targets, but what's kind of new with this topic is we can't get there on our own. And we need, therefore, to work with local governments, politicians, regulators, but more importantly, our customers in the various ecosystem to drive that transition. And we want to try and be as supportive as possible, and we want to try and be as fair and just as possible so that we can deliver not only the net zero, but do it in a way that is also good for as many stakeholders in society as possible. Now, when James and I embarked on this journey 2 years ago, one of the things we said is, well, if we're going to reduce some emissions, we better know where we start. And frankly, we had no idea how we were going to go about it. We have a rather large balance sheet, and it's not only about our emissions, it's about the emissions of the businesses we lend to. And so we went through a difficult roller coaster of a journey to do that, and it really made us realize that for anyone, no matter how large or small, even as individuals, you need to start by understanding what is your footprint. Even if it's not perfect, because none of those numbers are perfect, what is your footprint? Understand, measure it. Once you measure it and understand where that's coming from, you can then start to take action, and then you can track the impact of your actions. And this is why we're making available, free of charge, carbon footprint tools. We launched it last year around October for our retail customers. So now if you go in your retail banking app, if you're a NatWest or RBS customer, you can see your carbon footprint estimated. And we've just completed some pilots to do the same with SMEs and our larger corporates. And what's been really encouraging is to see some of those businesses actually taking some real actions. And some of it will be really complicated, but actually there's some pretty simple common sense things we can do. And some of the examples have ranged from changing all the light bulbs to LED bulbs across their facilities. It can be offering your staff an electric car-only car scheme. It can be introducing a cycle-to-work scheme. It can be putting solar panels on the roof of a farm building. And also, we've seen businesses who have purchasing power because, many businesses either are part of a supply chain one way or another, understand how they can use that purchasing power to make a difference not only to their emissions, but start to influence the system. You measure it, you take some action, but we're a bank after all, and we understand that taking action can take time, but also cost money, which is why we're also working very hard to provide the right products to support that, but also, frankly, incentivize and rewards people who are spending capital to not only grow their business, but to make it more sustainable. And so we launched green mortgages last year and earlier this year, and we've now written some green loans where if you can demonstrate the proceeds from the loans are being used to reduce emission, then you get a preferential rate. And I think there will be more of that coming, which means a lower cost of capital for your business. And then number two, as I said, it will take all of us to work together. This is a complicated problem. And even when we have customers who have the will, they have the desire, they get the business opportunity, they find the money, it is really difficult to then implement, which is why we firmly believe we need to work in partnerships across industries. And we've really tried really hard, and we've had some really encouraging things that we've done. We've worked with small businesses, a startup out of New Zealand called Kogo to develop that carbon footprint app. We've been working with Octopus. I think there's a speaker there from Octopus later on today you'll hear from around making the charging infrastructure available, so when people decide to purchase an EV vehicle, we help them set themselves up with them, to companies like BlackRock. There is no shortage of financial institutions desperate to put capital at play because they're being asked to do that by the investors. So how do we match the need and the funding?
Yeah, and look, we recognize the short-term challenge that businesses face today through supply chain disruption, input price inflation, and labor shortages. And we've also committed to supporting many of our customers, including in the agricultural sector, where we announced capital repayment holidays, access to increased overdrafts, and also reduced price of loans where for specific customers under certain circumstances, to give them the capital that enables them to manage what it can be a profit and loss problem through cash flow and the balance sheet. And we see the same issue with climate change as well. And our money can help make businesses more climate resilient, but also lock them into lower and more predictable energy costs. That means they're more in control of their costs and also drive new business models as well that can be the business models of the future that enable us to use our resources more efficiently. As Solange says, there's a lot of money at play here. At Glasgow and COP26, businesses, fund managers, asset owners, banks came together with a total assets under management of $130 trillion to put that money to use towards the net zero transition. And we see the power of aligning asset owners, fund managers, banks, big business, and small and medium-sized enterprises in the supply chain to drive this transition towards net zero and to make our money work as hard as it possibly can for that purpose.
So, I mean, it's been really encouraging in this room and, when we speak to customers, actually, the desire and people being like-minded. But it is difficult, and as I say, we are going to have to work together. And I think what we realized really quickly at NatWest and when we speak to others is, 10 years ago, you had people, and James was at the forefront of that, thinking about climate. It was a bit of a side project. We'd have nice conversations, but, we kept going at the business. And in our own journeys, this is why we said, no, we've got to rewire it. Just like we have to rewire society, we're going to have to rewire our infrastructure. And by the way, we've done it before again and again. We've done it with the internet. We did it when we put gas boilers. We did it when we put telephone infrastructure. We've done this before, arguably more daunting things. But if you're going to do that, you might as well think about the business opportunity again, rather than just think about it as something additional you have to do. And there's some really encouraging numbers, right? So we did a report last year, so it was prior to the difficulties of this year. But of all the carbon emission in the UK, we think the SMEs can help reduce half of that number. That is massive. It's not just up to a few big companies to do it. It is everyone, all the businesses in the UK. And if we do that and we create new solutions, new businesses, that could unlock upwards of 150 billion opportunities and create over 100,000 jobs. Now, if we weren't talking about climate and we gave those numbers, people would go after them. And then if I haven't, convinced you enough, if James hasn't convinced you enough, there's more and more encouraging stats about that rewiring of the business model. So we're seeing businesses with low carbon proposition starting to be able to attract a premium. Meat alternatives are on average 20% higher. We are seeing very early data that rents for energy efficient buildings are edging higher as tenants are worried about energy costs and have themselves need to report their carbon footprint. I mean, I haven't had a conversation with the customers this year where we don't talk about energy pricing. Replacing a gas boiler with a heat pump, and I know that's difficult, can cost you energy bills by 25% on average. Insulating your wall cavities or your loft, that's another 15 to 20%. As I mentioned before, I think more and more of the finance institutions who want to invest in this space will make it more attractive, and you will have greater certainty of being able to get finance over the longer term. Regulatory change are coming as well. We're seeing in the transport space with ultra-emission zones and banning certain types of vehicles. But also, a lot of businesses in this room, the one we stand ourselves, we've committed to net zero. And I think it's only a matter of time before those who don't do. And from our research, 3/4 of businesses in the UK see themselves as part of the value chain. And so we're all going to have to face it. No matter what size of business you are, you're going to get a form if you haven't got it yet, asking you what's your carbon footprint. And so I guess a parting thought is you can either wait until you have no choice but to do it, or you can get at the forefront of it with the support that us and many others can provide and get in front of it and create the opportunity that it can be.
Yeah, and I think many of the businesses here, of course, see that opportunity and are part of the innovation that's driving this UK-wide opportunity. And we did some work with the Scale Up Institute, who showed that it's uniquely distributed across the whole of the UK, with no region having more than 15%. And here in the West Midlands, there's over £1 billion of revenue associated with green scale-up businesses. So it is an opportunity for the whole country and for the whole economy. And between us, we really believe that we can turn the challenge of climate change into the opportunity of net zero. And as a bank, we're here to help and support you on every step of the way. So thank you very much for listening to us, and we look forward to chatting afterwards. Thanks.
Thank you.